So I'm here to talk about how the last 3 years of my life have gone, and it's been a wild ride. It started before January 6th on January 5th when a friend of mine came over and asked me if I wanted to go to the rally with him. And I did. It seemed like it would be a lot of fun, be a lot of patriotic people, so I put on my Heaven Will Destroy the CCP shirt and a giant foam panda bear head to raise awareness of what was happening in Hong Kong at the time. You wear a big silly hat and people come up to you and they ask you what it's about, so I figured I would try to stand in support of the people there, and that's why I was dressed like that if anybody's seen the pictures. So I got there and Trump gave his beautiful speech and the crowd was pretty jubilant, pretty receptive. I don't know how many people were there. Don't raise your hands because they're watching us. And he said, go down to the Capitol and make your voices patriotically and peacefully heard. So when he told me to do that, that's what I did. I walked down to the Capitol building with a large group of people, one of the largest groups of people I think I've ever been a part of. And we walked up the steps onto the second floor veranda of the Capitol building. Everyone sang patriotic songs. They all held hands and they all believed that they would triumph, that they would have the positivity to make things happen in the way they kind of wanted them to happen. And while I was up there with them and singing and flag waving, the door to my front opened up and the door to my left opened up. And I heard, come on in. So there I am. Everyone's peaceful, everyone's singing, no violence, no terror, no threats. Come on in. So in my head I'm thinking, wow, this has got to be one of the most secure buildings in the world. 1/3 of the US government is here. The only way these doors are going to open is if they open them. And the only way we're going to get in is if they let us in. So I thought, oh my gosh, I get a chance to walk in, there'll probably be a security screening, and I'll get to stand in the rotunda and watch this vote happen. I'll get to watch the Electoral College do what they're doing, and how awesome would it be to witness that, to be in the room while something like that happens. So I casually walk on into the building, and I get to the end of the hallway. I'm met with about a dozen riot-clad officers, all black, armor, face shields, everything. So all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, they welcomed me in, but now this doesn't look very welcoming. So I take a moment, take a breath, I look behind me, more people just coming through the door. So put up the head so they could see my face, and I put up my hands, and I walked over to these, I'm guessing, Capitol police officers, and I said, hey, I'm not violent, I'm not trying to trespass, I'm not trying to be anywhere I'm not supposed to be. Some sort of misunderstanding going on, and I can't just turn around and leave. The door was completely full. So for my troubles, and they decided to just smash me over the head with a baton. And they continued to beat me. So thank goodness I was wearing the giant silly panda bear head because I got a concussion through it. And had I not been wearing it, my blood would have been strewn all over the hallway of the Capitol. So now they pinned me to the floor, and the entire dozen of them proceed to just whip me with batons while I'm on the ground. They handcuff me and they stand on my throat. So I'm the only one in this crowd getting beat, and the tension just rises to the point where the people in the hallway couldn't take it anymore. So they rushed the officers and pushed them off of me, picked me up and carried me outside to safety, or perceived safety. The people in the crowd picked my handcuffs and set me free. So now I've got a concussion, my legs are all smashed, and I'm wandering around the second floor veranda. And they have the nerve to tell me that I went out to incite more violence. But when I saw the video of what I was doing out on the Capitol that day, I'm yelling through my concussion, tell the police you love them. We are all brothers. We can hold hands. Which, I mean, to the Biden administration is clearly incitement to violence. So the rest of the Capitol Police formed a big line to push everybody off the veranda. And I noticed what was coming, so I started to leave. And as I left, they got closer to me until finally they were right next to me, and one of them jammed me in the ribs of the baton, cracking my bottom rib. And when I got struck in the ribs, I covered my head, fear that they might smash me again. And when I went to cover my head, my hand brushed up against the visor of an officer's helmet for 100th of a second. Felony assault on an officer. So I managed to get away that day and I went home, but that was when my troubles started. Someone I knew, who the government refuses to tell me who, turned me into the federal authorities, and they began their surveillance of me. And this surveillance went well above and beyond what you can imagine. They started by driving by my house, taking pictures, and then they proceeded to follow me everywhere I would go. I have the documents for my discovery that shows the handwritten notes of them taking what time I woke up, when I would leave my house, where I would go, and what time I would leave those places. But that wasn't enough for them, so they decided to contact my local law enforcement and ask them to put a tracer on my car, to which they obliged. So now they had GPS coordinates for everywhere I would go and every place I would go on record. But that still wasn't enough for them. Next, they proceeded to dress up as electrical workers and go outside my house and install 24-hour surveillance cameras to watch me at all times. And for what? For, who am I? I'm an absolute nobody, but yet they found it necessary to have 24-hour video surveillance of me. And after 2 years of that, in February, they decided that they were done watching me and that they would bring me in. But bringing me in wasn't just something simple. At 4:30 in the morning on February 27th, they showed up and started launching concussion grenades at my windows. So I woke up to loud explosions outside my home, rattling my windows, rattling my doors, and I walked out to see multiple armored vehicles, helicopters, a dozen officers, and 2 SWAT teams pointing their green dot lasers at my chest as I walked out my front door. They ran up, they refused to give me a warrant, refused to give me an arrest affidavit, slapped me in handcuffs and threw me in the back of an FBI van. And then they did the same to everyone in my house. So the next thing I saw was my fiance being taken out in handcuffs and stuffed in the back of a van herself. But that wasn't good enough for them either. With their blank warrant that they served me, they went over to my grandfather's house next door, who was dying of cancer at the time and could barely stand up. But after he heard the explosions outside of his door, he can't tell the difference between a gunshot and a concussion grenade. He was convinced that they had come through my door and killed me. So here he is in tears, FBI banging on his door. Let us in. They took his cell phone. They took his computers. They took my uncle's tablet. I refused to tell them. They just told them that they'd never see me again. So they took me to an interrogation site and began to ask their questions, and took me then to a judge to do their first appearance. They chained me to a floor, proceeded to swab out my mouth for DNA without a without a warrant for my DNA. And then they chained me to a floor in a room with a stack of papers. The papers said they were holding me on a 14-day identification hearing that they would have in DC. So being quick on my feet, I waved over the prosecuting attorney and I said, hey, how about I identify myself in exchange for you not seeking my incarceration pre-trial? And to my surprise, he took the deal. And when the judge entered the room, he was furious. He says, oh, it says here you waived your 1044 or whatever document it was. To which, I said, under the terms of my release. And he started berating the prosecuting attorney. How dare you make this deal? What were you thinking making this deal? Who told you were allowed to do that? And he had shrugged his shoulders. He didn't know he had to keep me in custody. But that's what they wanted. They were convinced that they would leave with me to DC and I would never be able to see anyone I loved again. But thank God they took the deal, and I was able to walk away that day, and I was able to go home, and I was able to start my fight in court. Now, everyone here, they want to do the same thing to you. They want to call you a MAGA extremist. They want to come to your house. They want you under 24 surveillance. They want to read everyone's phones. They want your email history. They want everything, and they won't stop. And that's why we need change in this government. We need people that are willing to stand up and fight against this totalitarian state, who are willing to speak out against the injustices that are done against us. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to speak for all those people in the jails and in the prisons in solitary confinement, who get beat at night, who get fed things that they're allergic to intentionally from these sick, sadistic maniacs that are holding them. It breaks my heart to think that in the land of the free, at a freedom festival, that there are people locked away behind bars that we're not allowed to see, that are in solitary confinement, treated like animals. And we sing our songs, we love this country, but we're losing it. We're losing it every day. So we need to do what we can to take it back. We need to run for office. We need to canvass. We need to support candidates. We need to vet them and make sure they're MAGA candidates and not rhinos, because rhinos are worse than Democrats. At least we know where Democrats stand. And this country needs a sea change. It needs Donald Trump. It needs someone in the office who can do the job. The FBI needs checks and balances. The DOJ needs to be fixed from the ground up. We need new heads. We need to impeach Merrick Garland. There's so much that needs to be done in so little time, because every day our freedoms are dripping away, little by little. The next thing you know, we'll have an executive order to steal our guns, and the cops will just be following orders, because we don't have enough whistleblowers in this country. But there are people like Steve Friend, there are people from the IRS, people that are willing to stand up and tell us about these injustices that are being perpetrated against us. And those are the most important people. Those are the patriotic Americans. They say patriotism, or the patriots are people who stand up to the government when the government is wrong. And I don't think I've seen the government more wrong than it's been today. And that's why we need to encourage those whistleblowers, and we need to be it ourselves. If you see anything, if you see the government making these abuses, you need to tell everyone, you need to videotape it, you need to just not let them get away with this. We need to hold everyone accountable, and we need to live up to the Constitution that our founding fathers gave us. And that's why everyone being here today is so important. By just coming out here today, you're having your voice heard. I don't know if you know how dangerous it is to come out to these things these days, but they are. I know the FBI is here. They follow me around still. To this day, they'll do a dozen laps in helicopters around my house, or I'll step out to a dozen drones in my backyard at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to silence me. They're trying to silence all of us. They're trying to take away our voices, trying to rob us of our First Amendment, our God-given rights, which is... which is what they were trying to do with their brazen arrest, with their concussion grenades, with their helicopters, with their army tanks. They're looking to silence and scare anyone else who would dare step out of line, or stand up for their rights, or stand up for their fellow Americans. And we can't live in that country, all right? That's not the country we need to leave to the next generation. The next generation needs to know freedom, and we need to show them freedom. And we need to protect everything this country stands for. Thank you very much. I hate to pass around the collection plate, but legal defense, it's not something it's not the way it's meant to be. You should be innocent until proven guilty. You shouldn't need to spend thousands of dollars in order just to have your voice properly heard in court. They'd given me a public defender when I first was charged, and this defender spoke to me once. So when I texted her, I said, hey, I need a change of venue. I need this discovery. I need these motions made. I need this done. I got no response. Nothing for weeks. And I have documented evidence of my injuries on that day, to which they completely ignored. And next, I talked to John Pierce. He's a great attorney. He represents me now. And the day he said that he would represent me, I get a text from my public defender. Can I drop your case now? And told her no, that I hadn't signed the paperwork yet, and I still intended for her to do some paperwork. And she'd never talked to me again. I've never heard from her. And now that I've gotten my discovery, I've seen the lengths at which they will go to try to hold everybody. I've caught them already lying to federal judges and falsifying evidence and everything else under the book that we need to make sure we shine a light on. They have a video where I'm being released from my handcuffs. I walk several feet. I show the crowd my wrists, my free wrists. My handcuffs are no longer on. The prosecution took a still frame of that video of my hands up, put the caption below it, celebrating the second breach of the Capitol, and showed that to the grand jury in order to get my indictment. An indictment to which they had sealed against me. They told me that if I knew that I was under investigation, that I would flee the country and destroy the evidence. But they had contacted me 4 months earlier as a matter of intimidation and told me that I was being investigated. So they're lying behind our backs, they're lying to our faces, they're lying to the judges, they're lying to the juries, and in DC, they have a 96% conviction rate. So we need to be able to get these cases out in the open. We need to hear them, and everyone needs to listen to what's going on in each of them. I don't know if you watched the Proud Boys case, but that was a travesty of justice. They were hiding evidence, they hid their confidential human sources, they hid how many people were on the grounds that day, and they proceeded to put out terrorism charges on these people. Yet we have congressmen pulling alarms to stop congressional hearings that are causing all kinds of disruption within the courts, but what do? They slap on the wrist and then nothing. And I don't know what else I can do aside from come out and tell you guys about the horrors that the US government is inflicting upon us and just pray that it doesn't happen to everyone else. So hopefully it'll stop with us and that we can all form a line and push back this tyranny, because we cannot let it thrive in this country. I'd like to thank the Moon Brothers for having me out here. I'd like to thank the Freedom Festival. I'd like to tell everyone here that I love you and to stand up and be patriotic Americans.
Jesse James Rumson, ladies and gentlemen. Jesse James, J6 survivor. Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony.